Hey, babies. Hey, babies. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. What's up? Happy Friday, everybody. Happy Labor Day weekend. What's up?
Labor Day weekend, baby. 3-day weekend. How about this for me? Last weekend without work because we have to put the Spirit in here and I pair it with the Capitals. The last complete weekend off for me until April.
Wow. I get the bye week, but that's December. So I got a little ways to go. I get the bye week, but that's December. The way the Spirit are going, I think I'm going to be double dipping for a while here for, the way they're talking. They're clearly going to be in the playoffs and clearly might win a championship. So we'll see how far they actually go. And then, but this was Dan Quinn actually talked about this yesterday in his press conference and I agree with this, like this change in the schedule where there's no fourth preseason game, but they give everybody the week off is like the reboot of all reboots. I can't even tell you the difference I feel this Friday to last Friday. Like you can't explain what camp is. It's such a grind. Like it's such a grind. It's every day. It's boiling hot. In this case, this team decided to travel twice for 5 days each time. So they traveled for 10 days of it. And I think this just worked out. Everybody needed let's cool off. Why don't we just go hang out for the weekend before we get going? So I'm totally getting refreshed. I'm feeling good by Monday next week for sure.
Watch out. You're going to have John Keim and Rick Snyder saying back in our day, there were 2 practices and those 2 practices were hard. So, and there were 4 preseason games. So,
right. If you're not doing the Oklahoma drill 5 times a day, you're not practicing football.
That's right. Exactly.
Right. Yeah. If someone didn't lose a limb at some point in training camp, it wasn't training camp. Right.
If Michael Westbrook wasn't swinging on somebody, it wasn't training camp. So,
hey, man, I understand why it happens in training camp because after a while you're like, this sucks. Like, this just sucks. So
it's a pressure cooker. It's a pressure cooker.
So I hope they keep it this way. I like this. And now the NFL's got, because they can't not monetize everything. What's the off Labor Day weekend move for them? Like, there's got to be something here. I don't know. I was thinking yesterday, I'm like, could they do these shows that recap of every team of how they got here, like their season to their off season, and just do kind of a quick, let me catch you up on everything type of thing for the entire league and run through every team in 5 to 10 minutes each and explain everything that happened, like jump, leap. I think they could do something like that.
I mean,
I'll take on that project NFL if you want me to do that. That'd be fun.
I mean, we talk about this all the time, how the NFL Network back in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, how they were unreal. They had those specials on about just the season before, right?
Yeah.
Where it'd be the 2005 Redskins, right? And you'd be like, oh, I'm going to sit down and watch this for half an hour. I'm with you. I think that'd be great. But we know how the NFL Network is.
They have nothing this week. They own everything. They bought Christmas. They're like, what are they like? How did they let this one go? Raj has got to be sitting around going, we let a weekend go? Why did we let a weekend go? And they're going to fix that next year.
I will say this, though. I think the NFL revels in saying, all right, college football, we'll let you have Labor Day weekend. We'll let you have that one. And
they took Christmas away from the NBA. That is messed up.
I mean, but at the same time, I think they also enjoy saying post Labor Day, all us. I think it's a definitive, we're going to let America have this. I think that's kind of what it's turned into.
They're ruining malls. They're malls are struggling and they're Black Friday, us now.
Yeah.
We'll be buying everything on Amazon during Black Friday because you're not going to want to miss the Jets versus whoever. We don't even care what we put up there. It doesn't matter.
No, exactly. No, I mean, I'm with you. I've thought about this too, is because I actually think what you could do for Labor Day is you could actually do a quote unquote normal Sunday, but you could also have 2 Sunday night games because of the holiday on Monday and then still have games on Monday all day, a 1, a 4, and an 8 and have it go for opening weekend. But I will say this though. I think they've already now perfected opening weekend. We get a primetime game on Thursday. We get a Friday night game now with Eagles Packers, right? They stay out of college football's way for week 2. I think that's fine. And then on Sunday and Monday, we get it right back again. So, I mean, we are getting 5 days in a row of football again. So I think they're actually all right with this. I think they've perfected it.
No, I think they want to eat everybody. So I think they're like someone's sitting there twiddling their thumbs this weekend going, I don't know how we let this weekend go. Like there had to have been something to do here. I don't know what,
Well,
but something to do here.
I will say this though, that Thursday and Friday night, those Thursday, Friday night games do ease up people to travel for the 3-day weekend. Like going to Kansas City, if you're a Baltimore fan, to say, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and take a week, take 4 days off. I will say the travel becomes a little bit easier, but yeah, I don't know. I think they're happy where they're at now. I'm with you. Maybe they are actually going to think about this, but I think they're okay being out of the way for now.
Let's see. Soap opera we were in the middle of the entire offseason ends yesterday with, and after all that, Aiyuk stays in San Francisco. All right, so I'm trying to figure this out. Let me read, because Adam Schefter reported this, and here's Diana Rossini, okay, who also reported on this and said this about it. She said, this is not a new deal for Brandon Aiyuk. Schefter said the same thing, that nothing has changed over the last few weeks in terms of numbers. It's like 4 years, whatever, like 30 million a year, somewhere around there. That's the numbers. And she wrote this. In the end, this was all a massive waste of 3 months. It's obvious there was no plan here from either side. Lots of NFL executives around the league have shared over this time that if you vacillate that much, you really don't know what you want. With an exception here, and I think we're the ones that can raise our hand and go, oh, I think I know what he wanted. He just didn't get that part of it because the NFL isn't the NBA. And even the NBA is starting to recoil away from the, okay, we'll trade you if you're going to be that much of a pain in the butt. But that doesn't mean we have to send you exactly where you want to go. See Dame Lillard, who was like one of the first prime examples of he finally wanted to leave Portland. And in the good old days, if you're James Harden or whoever, or LeBron, you pick where you want to go, or Brad for that matter. But like he had no trade clause. That was a little different. But like in the good old days with people like Harden, who was like, not only are you trading me, you're trading me exactly where I want to be, whether you like it or not. Dame Lillard, and I credited Portland for this. I'm like, don't just trade him anywhere. Get the return. Like he's a valuable asset. Just because he wants to play in Miami doesn't mean you have to send him to Miami. If they have the right things, they have the right things. And if they can't facilitate a trade, oh, well, you don't get to tell them what to do. I think in this case, I don't think it's a hot take, and I think we know this. He wanted to come here. He not only wanted to be traded, or he wanted to get paid. He wanted to get paid here to play with his best friend. That period. Like what do we not know this? What do you mean? When she writes like vacillating over and over, he was like showing clips of our practice. He was talking about Jaden Daniels constantly. He publicly stated he wanted to come here. He would like posts that were about coming here. He didn't like posts about just going anywhere. Debo's thing last year was, I'll go anywhere, man. You guys just got to pay me. Aiyuk's thing clearly was not that. It wasn't, I'll go anywhere. Otherwise, he'd be a Patriot or a Steeler right now. If that was the case, he would be. But he didn't want to go to New England. He's ghosting them when they're apparently offering something in San Francisco would take. He wanted to come here. And when Adam Peters and company said, we're not in that business right now, or if you want a nothing pick, like we don't want to give up a big asset. I'd like to shine a truth light on Peters and go, what if they said we just want out of this business and we'll take a 5th round conditional pick that goes up to a 3rd or something if he hits benchmarks? Would you have done it then? Because we were never trading McLaurin. We were never giving up a 1st round pick and paying him. Like none of that stuff was happening. But I'd love to know, would we have done it if San Francisco just got so sick of it and they were like, fine, we'll just take a conditional 5th that can be a 3rd or something like that.
No, I think you're spot on here, because he also started to waffle into the, I want to go to a contender too. And everybody's going, you're on the contender. Like you're not going to go anywhere better than that team. Like now,
like, I want to win. It's not just about the money. You're on a winning team,
right? So
what
either
talking about.
So the Patriots are going to be one of the worst teams in the league. They're offering it up, or you want to go to Pittsburgh, where, as I say, that division is a bloodbath every year. I don't think you want that kind of smoke, guy. I don't think you want to go to that division. So yeah, I think he he got stuck here and he wanted to come here. And also, by the way, I need to correct you because Adam Peters did say this. It wasn't a practice clip. It was a screenshot of practice. I think that was a bit, I was just saying he even clarified that.
Still, it was over the line.
Correct.
When he
No.
And no matter
100%.
what, I mean, I don't think you glean anything from it. It's just ridiculous that he did it. That's all.
Yeah. So, but to pair that too of, okay, you wanted to come here, and then this team's going, we're not really in that business right now. We're not really in the business of giving up Terry McLaurin or whatever the first round pick is going to be. We are in no business of doing that. I think that's where he got stuck. And so what's funny is that everybody's saying the same thing too. The money didn't change. The deal was the deal. And I think money was probably number one to him. Going here was probably number two. And I think he just held out as long as he could because if that contract was sitting out there, well, he could sign it at any time. And he did. So I think he was honestly just kind of holding out to hold out just to see what would happen.
The other day when Lynch had his press conference, you could just see it where he's just like, you gotta just want to play. This is what this is about. He's like, we are giving you what you want. Sign the deal, dude. Yeah. So what was he vacillating over? What was the plan? You know what it was. He was going to sign there unless he pissed them off so much that they traded him here. Period.
Right.
That's it. Like he would have probably gone to New England at some point if it was going to be any other way. And then there's all this reporting that they tried to trade a mid-round pick for Cortland Sutton, and had they gotten Cortland Sutton, then they would have traded Aiyuk to Pittsburgh because Pittsburgh apparently didn't have a receiver they were willing to give up, George Pickens, or give up whatever, the asset was that they wanted back. And I credit San Francisco for holding firm here and going, okay, this guy's being beyond a pain in the butt, and whether we want to pay him or not, I don't know. But the reality is we need him right now because our window is open, and we better do it now because everything's going to change when Purdy's making 30, 40, 50 million, probably $50 million a year. They're going to have to pay him. He's a quarterback. So I think they were stuck and they just went we have to get something back. And I don't blame them for that. They didn't allow the pressure of he's just being a so let's just get rid of him. Still at the same time, this behavior was rewarded. So, and I don't know, I always kind of landed on, he is underpaid for what he's doing. And that's why I kind of always was like, just bump his pay up. I don't get what the problem is here. Just bump his pay up and tell him you're going to be a free agent after this year, or we're going to have to franchise you and you're going to get exactly what you want if that's the case. But I guess it just got to the point where his behavior was rewarded in the deal that he wants now, which won't age well when Jamar Chase gets the money he gets and when everyone else gets the money they get.
Well, and I think the other part here too is now, I think what happened too, the CD deal made the number. He wasn't going to get more than him, right? So I think
so.
Right.
That was part of the problem too. We were like, what is he asking for?
Right. And so when the Jefferson deal got signed, everyone went, okay, that's the number one, right? I think everyone is in full agreement. He's the best wide receiver in the NFL. Everything files in from there. So then that was what was really funny was, okay, that deal came in. What's yours going to look like? And same thing, it slotted in right behind him, right behind CD as well. And so the money wasn't going to change now. I think maybe that's what he was holding out for. Is maybe if Jerry lost his mind and paid CD even more money, maybe he thought he could slide in under that. But I think that's what it was. I think it was, let me see what the other number is going to be.
Yeah. Also, again, going back to how we started this, I'm heading into this nice break weekend. Whew, that's off my plate. I don't have to think about that anymore because there was always a 1% chance that they just go, this is ridiculous. Peters, will you give us a mid-round pick, and one of the 7 receivers you have on your team not named Terry McLaurin, that's possible that could have happened. There was always that 1% possibility that could have happened. And so I'm glad, whew, that's over with. I'll think about it anymore. So that's good.
I think the other factor on this one too was San Fran was probably also waiting to see if maybe any injuries happened in the preseason where if a team gets desperate, or 2, another team says, this guy doesn't really work with us, we're willing to move him. Not in this specific sense, but Amari Cooper, right? If that type all of a sudden became available, I think this maybe was a waiting game a little bit more than we think for the Niners, but Aiyuk ultimately had to accept the contract and he did. So
yes. All right, so the only other one, there's 2 of them now. Jamar Chase is still holding out. Trent Williams too. They have to deal with that. But Jamar Chase is holding out. He's got 2 years left on his deal. He is wildly underpaid, obviously, but 2 years left on his deal, and he's pulling the same thing. And the Bengals are interesting because they don't really pay a lot of people in general. So, and I can already, read the room on Mike Brown, who's old school, old salt from 1972, going, we don't tear up contracts 2 years in advance. And Chase is going, you do now. Oh, no. Is 2024 playa. So I think that one's going to end up in him getting paid too, because they're going to go sideways without him. I promise you that. They didn't redo his contract or trade T. Higgins or sign T. Higgins to anything else. So the rubber's going to meet the road on them. We're going to find out how much money they like to spend, and their fans are probably going to be very despondent after this year because they paid Burrow, but he's the quarterback and they're not paying anybody else. So let's see how it goes. I don't know how they get around not paying Chase even now 2 years in advance, but with them, I give it 50-50 that owner just goes, back in my day, we don't do things like that.
So there's two parts here. The first one is I knew when the Bengals signed Burrow to his deal, this was going to kind of like perk up everybody, because remember when they signed Burrow, even you and I were like, okay, it's a cheap franchise, but they signed their guy, right? But remember they were making these little statements of like, that guy, makes us a lot of money. We have all these stadium upgrades coming now. We really like what we're doing because we're winning now. And all I could think of was, oh, that's funny, because the guy you drafted after him is listening to this going, oh, you're making stadium upgrades. You're selling season tickets now, huh? I think I'm a part of that too, aren't I? And here he is 2 years early going, where's my money now? Because I'm the number one wide receiver for this guy, and I'm pretty sure you can't get by without me. The Bengals played a dangerous game by playing up all that stuff with Burrow going, yeah, we love having this guy. We love winning. We love having these season ticket holders.
He's a quarterback. They paid their quarterbacks, and they probably come from the position of, if you have a great quarterback, you can put a lot of different receivers with them and you don't have to pay them.
Sure.
Chase, I think, is obviously different.
Yes.
Look at Pat Mahomes. Pat Mahomes has gone through a million different wide receivers and still won a lot of Super Bowls, which I think is a testament to the coaching and his personal greatness. I don't know that the Bengals can necessarily say that. They have been very competitive. I think they're very well coached, actually, and they could remain competitive this way. And as long as Burrow is healthy, they will be. But it's a lot easier when you have a Hall of Fame caliber receiver with you. And we'll see if they're willing to pay the price to do it. And I think the next thing is going to be the players who come in after all of this are going to keep watching things like this. And now that they feel empowered because because they are taking stands unlike the way they used to in the past. Some used to, but most didn't. Like Darrelle Revis was out in another world doing the things he was doing. Like he was way ahead of the curve when he was doing this. But I think the more and more the players do it, the more and more they get their way to whatever degree it is. I think there's going to be future generation players like, say, that guy from Colorado last night, Travis Hunter, who, again, looks like he could play both ways, looks like he could be a stud up either way, both ways, is going to be, I don't care what you think about Deion and all the bluster and everything. He's going to be a very high pick next year. And when Deion says, I'm directing my guys to go where I want them to go, I believe him, because they're going to look at teams like this and they're going to go, huh. So even if I perform really well for you, you probably aren't going to get me to that second you might, and you might not. And there's other places that go, we pay our stars, period. Like this happens in baseball all the time, because without a cap, there's kind of no excuse for a lot of teams, but some of them don't want to pay the guys. The Orioles were going through this for a long time until new ownership came around. Baseball's a different dynamic though. In the NFL, you really have no excuse but to pay your best players. And what the Bengals are doing is a dangerous game. They're playing hardball with stars constantly. And if they end up walking, then everyone else, people like Travis Hunter and Deion, are going to come along and go, no, my guy isn't going to the place that's going to take advantage of him on a rookie contract and then sell him out when we get around to contract 2. So, that's just a note to Josh Harris and company here. And it's not that they don't know this. Welcome to the modern world of negotiations with the players. They have a lot more power. They're willing to exert it now. And I do think it's a bad message if you can't do it with everybody. Obviously, you do have to make choices. But if you don't pay your guys, I think it's going to be a carryover effect for people that are coming out and looking at you sideways when they come out of the draft.
I figured we'll probably save it for next week, but I read Ben Standig's piece. He did his annual agent survey.
Yeah.
And at the end of this one, after a bunch of, NFL questions, he asks if you could change one thing in the NFL, in the landscape, what would it be? And one of the ones that got brought up by agents was you probably either have to start guaranteeing these rookie contracts, or you need to shorten them so these players can get their first contract more. Right. And I'm thinking the 100%. owners won't let that happen. But if the PA was actually smart, they would hold out for this, because I think going to a 3-year system or a 4th-year option, like you reduce it by a year, that would be perfect for these players. Like Aiyuk right now and Chase right now would be able to get their deals and nobody would bat an eye. But now, because it takes them 5 years to get there, they're starting to hold out earlier.
I hear you. The owners would be foolish and they won't do something like that, because when Marvin Harrison Jr. has a 1,300-yard season this year, okay, because that's going to happen out there. Kyler Murray is back. It's so funny when everybody talks about rookie of the year for Jaden or Caleb, which I think is extremely possible. Obviously, I think people are forgetting him. Like, he's going to be a widely, heavily targeted, and probably is the best receiver that's come out. He's more pro ready than most receivers ever. Like, he's going to come out gangbusters. So when he has a 89 catch, 1,350-yard season with 8 touchdowns, guess what? After year 1, and if you had your system in place where it's even shortened now, the year 1 guy goes, no, player, you don't pay me now. So that's why they won't give up term.
Well,
it's also why baseball, they cannot give up the holding of the, otherwise Paul Skeens would be on Pittsburgh for a year and he'd be gone if that was the case.
But the difference there with baseball is it's arbitration. So these guys at least get a bump. There's a moderator in between to go.
Yeah, but I'd be like, even after this year, Paul Skeens could be paid $50 million a year. After 1 year, if he was allowed to hit free agency or allowed to kind of shop his services, because somebody would come along and go, get that guy right now.
Right. But I will say this, though, at least in baseball, like when they're entering those later years of arbitration, like Bryce Harper's arbitration number for the Nats, remember, it was literally like 20 million and no one batted an eye at that. And so I do think there's an in-between here that you could do it. And maybe you don't penalize team. Like, this is what I've also gotten with the NFL. Teams that draft good players shouldn't be penalized. Like, there should be some kind of relief on that. So I think the other kind of system you could have in place here is, this is the number. This is what your rookie cost. You might have to pay him more, but it'll only incur a certain percentage of your salary cap. Yeah, I think that's the workaround here. But the owners don't want to pay more money. So that's really, it's a moot point all the way around.
And they don't want to go into the Larry Bird rules of, well, if you keep your guys, we give you a break on the cap. And then they had to go to this other, because teams were doing that. So then they're like, well, the team who drafted really well, and as this team, we got to put you in a luxury tax. It's so complicated. If you try to figure out what the NBA salary cap is, good luck with that. It is like more complicated than the tax code at this point, trying to figure out what it is anymore. Anyway, I've talked about this a lot. You can't do it with everybody. I thought Aiyuk was an interesting case because I think he's a really, really good player, but he's not Justin Jefferson. So where does he fall on that? Where does he think he falls on that? I am all for the players making as much as they can in their career because it's a short-lived thing. And I'm all for them. I didn't like the way he went about negotiating, but I have no problem with outcomes where he gets the money that he wants to get. The other one that gets really, really dicey is quarterback. And I think this one, off this conversation of, we all kind of know the Bengals would rather not pay this kind of money to players, and the rubber will meet the road with Chase and Higgins really over the next, 6 months, probably the next couple of weeks with Chase. If he really holds out, like, we'll just have to see where they are on all of that. It's been funny watching people kind of put the microscope on Jerry and go, what's up, dude? Like, you're not paying your stars these days. And then he finally came around and he gave CeeDee Lamb his deal. And then Dak pops up and goes, no deal says a lot to me. And this one again, I think this one is more complicated than, are you just going to pay him? Because I don't know what the right answer is for that. I've been talking about this for months. I actually think I would wait it out with him and I would let it get to next year, because that's a different team. If he doesn't elevate the team, which is not better than it was a year ago, then maybe you don't want to pay him $60 million a year moving forward as he continues to get older. And I think it's actually a shrewd, semi-wise thing to do, albeit after watching Trey Lance last week, clearly he's not the answer for them. So they could fall into a category where they don't have a quarterback. And we know what that is. Everybody knows what that is. At the same time, with Micah Parsons coming up, Lamb just getting paid, they have other big salaries on their team, and they're not cheap. Diggs, Martin. I don't know that I would want to secure 3, 4, 5 years again at whatever that rate is when I might be able to get somebody younger. So I think they're in a weird spot, but it is funny when we have this conversation about like, are you being cheap? Well, Jerry kind of looks it lately with how he's treated his main stars.
I think the other problem, though, with Dak, and this is the Cowboys' fault, and I will continue to say this, when the new year opens, there's a $40 million dead cap hit, no matter what happens. And so the problem is if you wait and he has another MVP-like season, he's going to go, I'm going to test the market. And him just testing the market incurs that $40 million dead cap hit. So once again, I mean, this is their fault. I guess they could draft somebody and pray that it works because that 40 million is going to hinder you. But like we've seen with the Broncos, that didn't stop them from drafting a quarterback and having a huge dead cap hit. They're just looking at it as this is what we've got to deal with. But you're the ones that kind of put this
That's
contract.
Also not Russ, not in my opinion. I think Russ is a declining asset. Dak, I'm open to, is still very good. So
yeah, no, for sure. But I'm also just
I think Denver looked at Russ and went, we just can't move forward with this. He's just not good enough anymore. And Dak, I don't know that that's where we are with him.
I'm looking at it more from the dead cap hit is what I am. Like they both were incurring huge hits. I'm with you. Dak actually can still play. Russ, we'll see. I mean, I don't think it was ever going to work out with Peyton, but I look at it with that $40 million dead cap hit. You have to take that hit no matter what. You have to weigh, do we take Dak and kind of a sure thing, or do we then risk trying to get another quarterback in here? And like I've said to you, they might have the best back-to-back run of franchise quarterbacks maybe of all time. So you can roll those dice, but we'll see. Jerry hasn't exactly been able to draft a quarterback high is what I'm saying.
There's just no way they didn't make that Trey Lance deal hoping he would sit there for a year or two and turn into the cheap quarterback option for them. And clearly that's not happening. No. So that's why they're even a worse spot now. I think like it was so transparent why they brought, and I don't blame them, like why they brought him in. Like he would cost a fraction of what Dak costs, at least for a couple of years, if he works out. That doesn't seem to be happening.
Yeah. So no, they should have been, you know what? They should have been in like the Spencer Rattler sweepstakes. Like they should have just taken him and given him a flyer. And there would have been all this chatter all offseason, but they're getting killed over this contract anyways. They should have drafted a quarterback in the mid rounds. That's what 100%. They really should have done.
Yeah, they should have. All right, let me take a quick break. Brad wants to show ESPN 630 Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. Brad wants to show ESPN 630 the Sports Capital. Ron and Jack got jobs on the same day. Play. Ron Rivera is now an analyst on the NFL Network, which does, on some level, want me to invite him on this show because he's going to be on the set of NFL Network. But I was talking to like Kime and Ben and those guys yesterday about this, and I go, because I have not wanted to have him on because I just don't want to go through it. I just don't. Because I can't. It's the catch-22. I can't have him on and just talk about the NFL as he sees it, which I would, because then everyone goes, you didn't ask him anything. And I also don't at the same time want to do the list of grievances. I'm just like, I want to move on and turn the page. So if he's going to get offered, I already know it because they're going to want to promote that he's on. He's going to get offered. So what do you think, producer? Should I have him on? Because I think it's just so awkward, because like I like him but I know what's going to happen. It's going to be 10 minutes of why did you get Wentz and why did you say this and why did you do that? And what do you think about all your draft picks getting cut? Like I don't even know what to say to him.
I don't think you can. As the producer over here, that also I say this at least 5 times a week. I don't want to sound like the bitter ex-girlfriend, but Ron, every day on my show because, like I said, with every passing day, every decision he made looks worse and worse. And he was already criticized at the time for most of those decisions. I'm just saying, for you and his relationship, I don't think you should.
Yeah.
Mainly just too because it's every decision too. Like in that piece that I referenced earlier with Ben and the agent survey, an agent said out loud, well, it didn't look like they knew what they wanted to do year to year in the draft. Now it looks like they have a plan. And I was like, oh my God, Ron is still catching strays out here after he's been let go.
I think like the ex-girlfriend thing is perfect. Like I did really love Ron. I really did, you know, like I did. I genuinely did. Like I liked working with him. You know, like everyone says this about him, and it's true. He's like genuinely a really nice man. I think it's like it's hard like not to root for. I used to talk about that all the time. I'm like, it's hard not to root for this guy. Like this is a very stand-up, great individual, and it's like I want him to win. And the guy's played hard for him. Like seeing the systems in place now that are happening is so illuminating to what was not happening when he was here. Because like I know a lot, but I don't know everything. I'm not literally in the building every day. I'm on the periphery of it, but it's just watching what's happening now and the answers they give to literally everything in comparison to how he addressed literally every topic is, well, now I see why your team didn't do that well. And then they just shredded his roster, you know? So, and like, I was, what was it? Keim, I think said it yesterday. He was like, are you going to ask him to give you some draft analysis? Because you can't do that. And then he was like, are you going to, like, how do you not ask him about the quote, give me my ring when you win in a couple of years? Well, apparently without your players, like, I don't know what to do.
I think I texted you when the news came across. I said, oh yeah, he's going to be their new draft specialist.
Yeah.
Just because it's like, you can't put him on around the draft. The guy had the worst draft over the last 4 years. Like by far, nobody was worse in the draft than this team. So you just take him off in the offseason? Because I feel like that's what you got to do.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, Jack Del Rio ended up at Wisconsin.
Sure, that's probably fine.
On the field as a coach. So
yeah.
Like, I'm sure it's fine. Who said somebody yelled out? He was like, does Jack know it's a swing state?
Oh, come on. It's just a dust up. It's just a dust up.
You know, that weekend game after the election day, we'll see what kind of mood he's in. You know, because up there, it can go either way, guys. That's a toss up. That's a pick 'em. That's total pick 'em. I don't know. We'll see.
Don't worry. Police officers were assaulted. Somebody was shot. It was just a dust up at the Capitol, guys. Just a dust up.
Let's see. The Deions did win last night in their debut.
The Deions.
They beat North Dakota State. North Dakota State's good. That's Carson Wentz, Trey Lance, national championships, really good program. Obviously a tier below Division I, obviously, but like really, really, really good program. And nobody believes in Deion year 2 to be like some kind of juggernaut. And he even said in his press conference afterwards, he's like, I know a lot of you were like rooting for us to lose. They have quickly turned into a target. And I actually agree with him. I think there's I think this guy needs to be knocked down a peg because he came in like a tornado and for good reason, because he dominated the level he was at. And then he shows up here and in year 1, it was a total comet. It was, you know what it was? It was RG3. Like he showed up there and the first few games were like, oh my God. And then it slowly started to kind of really go the wrong way, turned into just about cult of personality, doesn't want to hear it. He's ornery with the media is an understatement with the way that he's acting. Now he's turning people that are kind of like, I don't know. I think I kind of want him to lose a little bit because nobody cares if Colorado wins. And I like the bluster and the back and forth with the media actually screams to me that they aren't going to be good. And as much as I think North Dakota State is a very risky opponent for anybody early in a season because they are a really good program at their level and almost knocked them off last night, it does scream to me like, you guys are not going to have a good season. And I think we all know it. I think you know it. And then you better hope people just don't like making fun of you because I think that's where this is going, albeit that they have two players, his son, the quarterback, and this Travis Hunter guy, who I think is going to be a top 10 pick. And depending on what position the NFL sees him as, because nobody's a two-way player in the NFL, like whichever position they see him as, receiver or corner, he's going to be a very, very high draft pick. So they've got two stud players. And then, but the rest of it is probably going to crumble like a house of cards. So have your fun now, Deion, because I think everybody sees what's coming. And I think he does too, which is why I think he's been so pushy back to the media now. Like,
I think you had the off the field comparison with RG3 was spot on. I'm going to go the actual on the field comparison is Jim Zorn. Jim Zorn went 6-2 and everybody's hip hip harangue for 8 weeks.
I don't think he's a bad coach though. I don't think, because that I know it's Jackson State and he recruited people there. So he had better athletes in general, but that record is that record. So he's got to know what he's doing on some level. Like, Zorn was just thrown into something he should have never been thrown into.
But still effed around and won 6 games.
Yeah,
I mean, that's like an accomplishment. I'm sorry, it is. But with Deion, I think people forget, like, you have to adjust how you act at each level, I think. And so when he's at an HBCU, he can kind of act like God because he's Deion there. Whereas in Colorado, he's still acting like God, but there's a lot more people around and a lot more people around to criticize him. And not only that, he didn't adjust how he acted around his players. Like, remember he came in year 1 and said, half you guys are going to be out of here, like enter the transfer portal. And then last year, he even had his son putting on Instagram, hey, who's a corner? Who's a wide receiver? Send me your reel. Like, the way he acts with his players now, you can't do that. Like, he could have done this 5 or 6 years ago before the NIL stuff kicked in. I think it would have been okay. But now that players can literally go, I'm good, I can go enter the transfer portal and somebody will pick me up. It's a bad mix at a bad time, I think, with him. And that's where I think he needs to learn this a little bit. Like, you need to start acting differently towards different players. Like, you know how this works. Some guys do better with tough love. Some other guys do better with straight up criticism. Like, I think this is where he's going to lose his team, is where he treats everyone the same. At least it seems like that on the surface.
Yeah. Mark Jones during the broadcast last night said he's trying, because no one knows why he's so ticked off at CBS, whatever it is. Like, everyone knows why he was ticked off at this columnist, because the columnist was nitpicking him hard. And I guess he got thin skinned with it. He just can't take it. But Mark Jones insinuated that someone at CBS either wrote or said something that questioned his faith. And that's why he's mad. But I don't recall any story that was like Deion Sanders is a liar about his religion. Like, I don't remember anything like that. So I don't know what he's talking about. And I think he's just backpedaling a little bit and trying to figure out, how do I defend shutting out major networks when it's clear that the walls are closing in on me a little bit and he's acting very defiantly?
Yeah, right.
Anyway. All right. Up next, not on YouTube, if you're watching here, because this is audio only, but on the show, you will hear from Paige Mateer from the Washington Spirit for our Spirit Spotlight. Brad, watch the show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.